Thank you for joining me. We're at a different time slot because your 5 a.m., your 5 p.m. is a little early for me now. So I'm thinking this might be a good time. Please let me know if this time works for you. Please let me know if you can hear me okay. Do I need to speak louder? I don't have my pods in. I'm trying this without the pods because I'm not sure that they help that much. So, over the past week, something interesting has been unfolding in our messages. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you. Each stone has carried its own teaching. Not only each stone, but, because we had the rune, our first of the runes, because believe it or not, I'm actually running out of crystals. Finally. But when I've actually stepped back and I've had a look at the arc of our messages over the last week, I've realized that they're actually forming a journey of the soul. So tonight I just wanted to look at them all together. So see if you can recognize where you are yourself on this journey. It's really intriguing to me to actually look at the whole thing. Because I get really deep in these. I spend about 10 hours a day working on these, getting the information, sitting with the crystals or the rune, feeling into what it means spiritually rather than the popular culture stuff. I come at it from what I'm told, which is why my messages are so different from what other people say about the crystals. I said it last week, I actually when I trained as a medical herbalist, I learnt to recognise the doctrine of signatures. It's how you tell what a plant, where it's active, what its activity is in the human body, or should I say in the mammalian body, really. And you look at things like form, colour, that part of it that you're using, and they all mean something different, and when you put it all together you get a picture. So that's what I've been doing with the crystals. I look at where they grow, how long they take to grow, their habits, their colour, the forms that they take, and all of those help me understand the crystal better. And then I look at some of the old crystal lore about the crystals, how they've been incorporated into human lives over the millennia, not just new age stuff, but the older stuff. And then that's how I put the messages together. So it surprised me to look back and see the way that it's been going. So the first one of our crystals this week was snow quartz. That's 7 days ago we had snow quartz. And snow quartz, the evening word on the thumbnail was stillness, because everything begins with stillness. That inner hush, the hush that you feel in a snowstorm, was the story that I told to help understand that feeling. Now, when I'm talking about crystals, I'm not saying you need the crystals to feel this. The crystals are bringing through a message of how we can progress on our spiritual path. So when I talk about crystals, where is my snow quartz? I'm not sure. I've put it away, I think. Oh no, she's here. She's sitting on the selenite. So when I look at the snow quartz, when I held it, I felt a quiet hush, and I shared that in the videos. And to me, it reminded me of the feeling of when I wake up in the morning in the middle of winter and there's a snowstorm. And I'll open the blinds and I'll look out, and the snow will be going past horizontal. We get a lot of wind here. Snow's flying past my window horizontally, and I'm watching it, and it's so quiet, there's a hush. And it's almost like if I wake in the morning in the middle of winter and it's quiet, there's a real hush outside, I know it's snowing. So we spoke, sorry, we spoke about how everything begins with stillness, finding that quiet inner hush. Because when our nervous system softens, and this is the thing, our nervous systems become so wound up. When we've had a journey of grief, loss, trauma, our nervous systems are on alert. If you've cared for somebody long term and you've been on alert for anything that went wrong, that might go wrong, on alert to advocate for them with the medical authorities, then your body becomes used to that state of alertness. And when it no longer needs to be, your mind knows, but your body stays in that state of alert. So our first step is learning that stillness, learning how to come within and to soften so that the soul can finally be heard. Now, it's not only caregiving, but our modern life is very stimulating. I mean, historically, basically the last 40 years, human life has been really stimulating, and it gets more so every year. The television, and then we had like streaming TV rather than just individual channels. Just always 24/7 it was on, rather than just so many hours a day. And like we had radio before that, but that was just audible. When you've got the visual as well, it's extra stimulation. And it's got more. We got the internet in the 90s, and now everybody walks around with one of these in their hands all the time. And we've got information at our fingertips and stimulation. Because when you're sitting there and you're scrolling through Facebook, TikTok, X, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, your brain's getting dopamine hits all the time. And the brain gets overstimulated and it gets into this point where it's in this state of hyper excitation. And so that puts our whole nervous system into that state. And the nervous system needs to settle before we can hear our soul. Because while we're busy on that and it's like a treadmill, you think of a hamster or a mouse or any of the animals that we give them treadmills in their little cages to keep them exercised so that they become little flat blobs, fat blobs. You think about them running, and we've always, the imagery of the hamster wheel was something that most of us have grown up with, that thought of, and the rat race, all the rats racing off to work and racing home again. It's like this tidal thing that goes in and out every day, off to work, back again. It's just that homogeneity, right? Homogeneous. Everything is the same. Everyone's the same. Everyone's doing the same thing. And this keeps us on high alert. The nervous system stays on high alert. And because we're so busy in our lives, our soul is very quiet. The voice is quiet. It doesn't get a chance to speak. It just sits there quietly and it waits. Waits for something to happen. It could be a loss of someone, an accident, loss of a job. There's lots of things that we've talked about them before. When those things happen, it causes a pattern interrupt. And that's when the soul has a chance to speak. We have a choice whether we actually rebuild the pattern or we allow the pattern interrupt to take us to listen to the soul. Now, it is not easy to slow down. It is not easy to listen to that pattern interrupt. And I know, I fell off my horse in 2000, January 2000, and I broke my neck. I broke C1 You break C1 and you're dead. And I broke C7, which is, so C1's the one right at the top. It's the one that holds the skull up. C2 is the one that allows this movement, right? And C7 is the one at the base of the neck where it joins the thoracic spine, the spine that runs through the middle of, but spine basically from here to your lumbar, which is around your sacral center. So when I had that accident, sorry, I'm just trying to remember where I am. When I had that accident, people said, you need to slow down, Merran. This is a message. They're trying to tell you to slow down. And I said, I am slow down. How can I slow down any more than this? I'm in a halo. I'm having to learn to walk again. My legs don't know how to work anymore. How much slower can I go? And, I didn't even, that was in 2000, and I didn't even realize it until a couple of years ago. It was 2016. I had another accident that slowed me down again. And that one was to my ankle. So that really slows you down when you can't walk. Right? Again, slowed me down so I couldn't walk. And I listened at that time. I slowed down. I had to learn to pace. Because if I tried to keep on going the way that I've always gone, I would end up in so much agony at the end of the day. So I had to learn to pace myself, do things in little increments and take lots of rest. And in that lots of rest, I listened to the voice of my soul. Rather than sitting in front of the telly, I listened. Now, I've always been a very introspective person. I'm a rising Pisces. It's just a part of who I am. But it slowed me down. Now, when you slow down, it's not easy to, because people then say, oh, you're lazy. Look, there's all this stuff that you should be doing and you're not doing it. Why aren't you doing it? And I know if you have slowed down, if you ever slowed down, you've had that. If you've ever done anything to look after you, you've been called selfish, lazy. Someone even told me I was a harlot, a slovenly harlot, because I slowed down, started taking care of me. So that takes courage, because the world points finger, and you don't feel like you're contributing anymore. And we feel like we need to contribute to the world, but I'm not contributing anymore. I don't have any worth or any meaning if I'm not contributing. It takes courage to stand up against that social norm. So I have a question. I'm sorry, I'm looking down because I've got a few notes to try to keep me on track. I tend to wander down rabbit holes if I don't have something to hold me. So I have a question. Where do you find stillness in your life? You can answer it in the chat or just ask yourself. It doesn't matter, either or. You can tell me in the comments if it resonates, but that's not necessary, because a lot of this is internal stuff. But yeah, where do you find stillness in your life? Is there something that you do that allows you to find it? I've shared with you over the last week, over the last few months, how I find my stillness. And it was interesting when I held this crystal that I felt it. But you don't need to have the crystal to feel it. If you've ever been in a snowstorm, your memory can help you find it. Okay. I've been talking about that for a long time. Our next crystal was wolfenite. A Wolfen Night's not really very well known. I'd never heard of it, but I bought an estate lot and it was in it. And it was like, okay, I'll put it up on the thing, and kind of just stayed there at the top of the bed for a few years until I started doing these. Hello, is it Leah? Yes, nature works. I find nature works too. Yeah, that stillness that you find, like sitting on a beach, just quietly listening to the waves, the sound of the gulls, the sound of people in the distance. That's another place you find stillness. I find it with the horses. I can go out there and just be present with them. Because with horses, if you're not with them with an open heart, you can't understand their communication. They're heart-centered animals, which is why they're so healing. And I find when I'm with them, I open my heart, I slow my heart rate down to theirs, and their presence gives me that stillness too. But it's also times that you're creating, like if you're a creator, if you're sculpting, you're working with clay, you get into that place too. It's a place of stillness. I used to call it in the zone, didn't we? And yes, Ronnie, when you wake in the morning and all you hear is the birds as you watch the sun come up. That bird song is beautiful, isn't it? It brings you so much back to center. It's part of the natural world, and it's actually embodied in our DNA, because for so long as a species we lived like this, intertwined with the earth and the animals, and it's very recent that we've become separated from it. So we actually find these moments when we connect to nature. Those are the moments that we feel closer to stillness. And it's interesting because in Kabbalah, the word for nature is the same word for God. So when nature is God, source. Nature is a part of the universal consciousness. So that's why when we are quiet and present with her, we feel that deep stillness, that acknowledgement, that inner knowing, that remembering. That's what it really is, isn't it? It's a remembering. So back to Wolfenite. From stillness comes awareness. When we begin to see ourselves, to see our patterns in our lives more clearly, that's where Wolfenite comes in. So we go from stillness to becoming aware of the patterns. So that moment when you start to notice your patterns, you start to say, I remember reacting like that when that happened before. And then you start saying, okay, well, this I can see this as an ongoing pattern through my life. And I used the example in the Wolfenite message about how I kept on choosing the same type of partners. I thought I was choosing someone who was different. They had different jobs, they had different personalities, they presented in the world differently, but inside they followed a particular pattern that I had been imprinted with as childhood. They say boys marry their mothers and girls marry their fathers. And even if you never had a good relationship with your father, you'll say, I'm not going anywhere near a man that's like that. But something underlying the patterns underneath are the ones that attract us. And so recognizing those patterns, that's what Wolfenite came to talk to us about, and how sometimes that awareness can be really uncomfortable when we realize that it's me, It's not them. It's that moment that we swap from being a victim to being a survivor. Because we no longer say, oh, I've been in 3 relationships and all of them were abusive. And there's nothing wrong with me, it was all them, right? And then you swap it and you say, well, there's a pattern here. What is it about me that finds these types of people attractive? What is it about me that attracts these types of people? And I remember I shared that, I'm a highly sensitive empath. It's how it allows me to do this work. And what empaths do is we attract narcissists. It's a perfect dynamic. The narcissist attracts the empath and the empath attracts the narcissist. Make a perfect pair because of the way they complement each other. The empath feeds the narcissist and the narcissist gives the empath structure. And this has nothing to do with blame. Nothing to do with blame. If you're like me and you're a highly sensitive empath and you find you've attracted narcissists, I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying there's a pattern that you can change that will stop you attracting them. And that is boundaries. And I don't know if we speak about that yet or later. But that awareness, like hearing, you're an empath and you attracted that narcissist into your life because that's who you are and what you do. It's like, no, I'm not. I wouldn't attract that stuff into my life. Why would I do that? And we could get our hackles up. So it takes courage to sit with that awareness. It's very uncomfortable when we first start looking at our patterns. So most people don't go there. It comes up, they sweep it under the carpet and keep on going, and they never change. They never allow that fundamental transformation to happen that the patterns are bringing up and trying to show them. But I'm losing my voice. But being able to see these things clearly, this is the beginning of change. Because once we see it and we see our part in the dynamic, we can change ourselves. And when we realize that, that is the moment of liberation. It's the moment of freedom. Because you realize that, okay, it's not my fault. I'm not wrong. But I have attracted these scenarios because it's a repeating pattern. In some way I've attracted it. And then seeing clearly what it is that has attracted it. Like actually realizing that I actually was codependent and I didn't have boundaries. I couldn't blame them from ignoring my boundaries because I never had them in the first place. But I was saying, they're just walking all over my boundaries. Hello, Linda, lovely to see you. But the truth was, they weren't walking over my boundaries because I'd never given them any. So that moment of awareness, okay, this is a boundary issue. I need to have firmer boundaries. I need to be clearer. And then you start learning that. You start putting those boundaries in place. People pushed back. They push back against it because this is not your normal. You're not being yourself. And again, you'll be called selfish for having boundaries. And that's just them pushing back against you changing. Don't wear it. And I don't often say things definitively like this because everything's a choice. But if you choose to not wear the labels that they put on you, then you do feel that freedom. Keep putting your boundaries in place. Say, sorry, this is my hard boundary. It's like when we're raising children. And you have a boundary We can't let our children get away with blue murder because they'll grow up to be murderers and thieves and all sorts of other awful things. Okay, I'm just going to stop and look at Leah's message here. Yes, that's it. They feel safe for a little while, but then you start to realise there's something not right. And they slowly erode your confidence in yourself until you're dependent on them. And so the road to recovery from that is long as we learn to love ourselves and we learn to feel that peace. But as soon as we actually get out of the situation and feel safe, that safety brings its own peace. And bravo for having the strength to walk away. That shows strength, fortitude, and a certain degree of self-love that a lot of people don't get to. So, Leah's already answered this one. What was something you became aware of about yourself? We've got my question here, she says, this year, but it doesn't have to be this year. It can be some time in the past. What is something you became aware of about yourself? A pattern about yourself in this last year. Again, you can tell me in the comments if it resonates, if you want to share, or you can just put that question down and journal on it later. What was something you became aware of about yourself? So from awareness, we went to trust. And the crystal for that was actually the stone. It was the Shiva Liam. And that's sitting underneath some of the other crystals over there. On the selenite. Sorry, foot's going to sleep. So Shiva Lingam says that once we see clearly, once we start to see those patterns, we start to see clearly, we're invited to trust the unfolding. And so this one, sorry, the next step is the trusting. Trust that things are unfolding in the right way, in the way that they are supposed to. And that can be really difficult, to actually release control, to no longer try to control anything. You know, I've never been a control freak. I've never been into controlling things, people, anything. To me, control of myself was more important. But still, when I look back, there were certain things I tried to control that weren't actually within my power to do so. I probably still do now. Because that's a part of it, being human and ego. Ego needs to be in control. I think we'll always struggle a little bit with that at some point. I think even the most highly enlightened gurus are probably still struggling a little bit at times with that, not controlling. But when we can stop controlling everything and allow life to move, just allow it to move through you. The word surrender comes up, but to me, people talk about surrender. I'm sorry, this is really annoying. People talk about surrender, they throw it around as like a new age word, isn't it? Surrender. You have to surrender. I don't like surrender because to me it's that white flag moment when you've given up hope. To me, it's more allowing. Allow is the word to me that is better than surrender, because allowing, you're still holding on to sovereignty. You're still staying sovereign in yourself, but you're allowing life to move through you. You are open to it moving through rather than closing and holding things tight. Just been shown that image of how of cancer, and how the tenacity of cancer, how it holds on, doesn't let go. Because crab, they've also shown me like the bull terrier, how it has a jaw that once it bites, it can't unclench until the teeth are totally closed. Then it can unclench. It's just the way that the jaw is made. And we can be like that too. We hold, we hold, we hold, we hold. And we can't let go until we've closed and released. I don't know why they gave me that. There is a difference between control and trust. Right? When we control something, when we need to feel that we're in control, it's like I'm actually being shown, and I don't know, if you're in a buggy and you're driving horses, right? You had a couple of horses, one horse, two horses, in a carriage or a buggy, or those can't remember the word. The caravans that the horses pulled across America from east to west. You're in the driver's seat. You have your hands on the reins. You guide the horses. You're in control. Tell them when to start and when to stop. Allowing is stopping holding the reins. It's allowing life to move. In that case, it would be allowing the horses to move at their own pace. And another example to do with horses is allowing them to lead, rather than trying to stick them into a frame and control the situation. Is invite and allow them to step in. So I don't know if those examples mean anything to anybody, but the difference between control is holding on, and trust is allowing, releasing. And once we're aware, once we become aware, we can go into that allowance. The word here I've got to riff off is surrender, but we've already done that. Now, most of us here are of an age that we're old enough to have watched life unfold in ways that we couldn't predict. Yes, trust is allowing. Not surrender, it's allowing. Most of us have actually watched our lives unfold in ways we couldn't predict, right? I have an example. I married my daughter's father. He presented himself in a particular way for about 18 months. The day we were married, day of the wedding, he changed. He tried to pick a fight with a guy on the forecourt at a petrol station. And I felt his energy escalating. He was ready to get into a real fisticuffs. And he's a berserker of Viking energy, Viking descent. And he's as a berserker when he fights like a berserker. And I was there on our wedding day watching him getting ready. He's moving into berserk. It's like, I could never have predicted that gentle teddy bear of a man that I loved would do that, would suddenly switch like that the moment he put a ring on my finger. So life does do unpredictable things. Like today, I step out of the caravan Same thing that I've done thousands of times with that step exactly where it is. My foot misses a step and I'm down. I'm down, smashed into the ground, hit my head, land on my wrist and my knee. Luckily enough, my knee, not the one that's already bruised from the last fall. It's unpredictable. We can't predict things. We can't control what happens next. Things unfold in ways we don't expect. And when that happens, we often reach for control. The ego wants to control it, wants to control it. Now, what have you said here, Ronnie? Yes, that's right. We feel that if we show them how much we love them, for who they are, that they will see that and understand that. And I think that probably most of us have done that. I have, Ronnie. I've been there. I have loved. I've loved unconditionally and completely, but not had it seen. See, we can do that, but we can't control how they receive it. We can't control anything that anyone else does. We can't control the events that happen in our lives. And I think that's where we go next. Because when we give up trying to control, come on, mind, where are we going? Team, help me. When we give up control, when we accept we can't control things, we look to ourselves. We realize, I am the only thing that I can control. And yes, it is, it's coming up a bit later. So the next day, we had healing, which came from, I'm not sure whether we say Faden or Faden, to be honest. I think it's supposed to be Faden, because I think it's a German word. The Faden chords. So the healing comes next, because just like the thread in the Faden, put it right here. Now remember, the Faden quartz, it grows between two rock faces and fissures. And what happens is the earth moves with tectonic movement, earthquakes and stuff, or just the plates are moving, the walls move, the rock moves, and it breaks the crystal. And what happens is the crystal heals along, see this white line through here? Right at the base, there's a white line. It's not very clear in this one, but it still actually has a beautiful energy. Still a beautiful Faden. So what happens is that that's where it grows from. The little thread will grow to join the rocks together again. And then the crystal grows around it, right? The quartz grows around it. And then there'll be another movement and it will move again. It'll grow a little bit of a thread to pull, to hold the rocks together again. And then it fills in that space. This one, I think it grew this way because the thing's along here, and it's really quite amazing. It's a little bit dusty. I should have scrubbed it first. See, that looks more like what's growing downwards, and this is more like what's sort of tried to grow upwards. So just like the thread in the Faden quartz, our lives, we have breaks and fractures, things that happen in our lives. Not necessarily physical breaks and fractures, but just breaks and fractures in our lives, in relationships, in jobs, situationships. I mean, one of the breaks and fractures that most of us have experienced is our children leaving home. The ends of relationships. It can even be the end of a project. The project comes to an end, and that's the end. There's a break before we actually start the next project. But each time we have those little fractures in our lives, something stronger grows around it, just like this. You know, this quartz has grown around that little thread. The little thread started, the quartz grew around it, and it became stronger. Each time, you know, if you think about it, if it was only this little bit here on the end, that hasn't got a lot of strength. But by the time it's grown all of this, there's a lot of inherent strength in that crystal. More so than if it had just grown on its own. So something stronger forms through that fracture. And you know, it's the same when we break something. I broke my foot a year and a half ago. And as you know, went and had the x-rays, and you see how the break heals, because it was a little bit displaced. So the bone had to build around between the two broken bits. And so it became quite big, right? It became this big growth around it while it was healing it. And then it slowly gets reabsorbed. But where that broke is stronger than it was before, right? That fracture that I had, it became that part of, I'll never break my foot in that place again, because that bone is now stronger. And it's the same in ourselves. When these things happen, they make us stronger. We can choose to allow them, and this is where personal choice comes in, free will. We can choose to allow them to make us stronger, or we can stay in that place of, it shouldn't have happened to me. And that's just a point of personal growth. I don't like that energy, but there's nothing wrong with people who are there. It's just they haven't reached that point yet where they realise they have a choice. And that's the thing, you know, I remember in my 20s, you know, there was 30s maybe, there was this whole thing about you choose. That's your choice. And I always said, it's not a choice if you don't realise you have one. I think that's important for us to remember. It is only a choice if you realise you have a choice. If you don't realise you have a choice, you can't change the choice that you make. Okay, they're really good at showing me these images. So I've been showing horse again, because horses are my thing. And they've got blinkers on. You know, like often carriage horses have blinkers on, so they can only see what's directly ahead. And they don't really have a choice. There's no choice there. They've got the choice to turn their heads to look. And the main reason that's actually done is because horses are prey animals. They see something that scares them, they just run. That's what they do. They tend to flight rather than fight. Although they're pretty good at fighting too. But so that they wear the blinkers so that they don't freak out about things over there that actually aren't dangerous, but they think they are. We get to that with Soello. So where was I going with that? I can't remember. Hopefully you know where I was going with that. So really, the message we got through Vardhan Quartz is that healing is very rarely linear. Often with the Vardhan Quartz, it's not a linear line. And if you actually look at it really closely, it's quite a broken line. Kind of looks linear, but it's not really. Yeah. And we spoke about fractures becoming strength, and the soul thread, our soul thread weaving through everything. So I talk a lot in physical terms to try to help things up, to try to anchor things into our minds and our bodies. But this is also the soul journey. So the soul The soul is the thread that continues through it all. Each time the soul is whispering, the soul is holding it together like a thread that weaves through your stories. And the soul is always asking you to choose the soul rather than the ego. And that's what each of these breakpoints are. Each of these opportunities, each of these losses, these things that the ego feels are so bad, the soul sees as opportunities for the soul to grow and experience more. So the soul is the thread through all this that holds it all together. And when we start to understand soul contracts, we understand why these experiences happen. And it allows us to move out of that why me into the next step is, why do you think you're so amazing that you think you could handle this? Why did you put me through this? And we have this talk to our soul. And then we get to the point of, okay, I'll allow you to lead. I mean, you are billions of years old and I'm only 62, right? So my question here is, what has helped you heal in your life? At the time, it doesn't feel like something that will help you heal. But it becomes that. And you look back on it in the past, retrospect. Hindsight, you can see that actually there was a lot of healing for me in that. At the moment, it didn't feel like it was healing at all. It felt like you were caught in the middle of a perfect storm. But you come out the other side and you look at it and you see the healing that happened. Again, you can tell me in the comments if it resonates, or just put it down and journal on it for yourself quietly. You don't have to share in here if you don't want to. Our next crystal was the panda agate. And where are you, panda? Oh, look, I just found the Shiva Lingam. It doesn't matter, we don't need the crystals. The next one was the panda agate. This brings with it the deep work. We're finally starting to get into some deep soul work. Because the panda agate represented the growth that happens underground. Now remember, its other name is truffle agate. And in the evening message I talked about that. I didn't in the morning, but in the evening message I spoke about truffle agate, how truffles grow underground. They grow for several years and they can't be seen. The growth is invisible. You actually have to dig down and unearth them. They've used pigs and they've used legatos, my little woolly companion, the legato dogs, the truffle dogs. They've used pigs, they use dogs for hunting for truffles. Because you can't find them, they don't come to the surface. And we spoke about how that growth that happens underground is invisible, but it's powerful. You don't see it happening. No one else sees it happening because it's happening inside. This is the invisible part of soul growth. And it's a time that takes patience. It doesn't happen overnight, but it will happen. The old Pantene ad, right? It takes patience. So you have to give it time to grow, time to settle. Because all of the transformation happens invisibly, below the ground, below the level of sight, below the level of understanding. And our question, have you ever had a period in your life when nothing seemed to change? But later when you look back, you realize that everything was changing. An example is building a house. Okay. Foundations go down, the walls go up, the siding goes up, the roof goes on, the walls go up, siding, yeah. And then it looks like it's built, it looks like it's ready to move in. But that's not even half the work. All the work happens on the inside where no one can see what's happening. Until finally, months later, the interior is finally finished. The carpets are down, the blinds are up, the drapes, the kitchen's just perfect, the bathrooms are in, bedrooms are sorted with wardrobes and whatever else you wanted. And finally, the thing that looked complete months ago is ready for you to move in. It's that patience of waiting for the transformation to happen that you can't see from the outside. Again, tell me in the comments if this resonates, if you are aware of a period in your time that nothing seemed to change. You know, it could even be the learning through different relationships, whether they were romantic or friendships, it doesn't matter. But different relationships where you found yourself repeating the patterns, slowly fixing things as you recognised patterns bit by bit. But you felt like you weren't getting anywhere because you felt like you kept on repeating the same mistakes. But then suddenly something surfaced and you realised that there had been a lot going on underground and you're now in this different place. Because we never realise it when it's happening. We only realise it when we look back and see how far we've come. Again, they're showing me, okay, you're walking along a path. Actually, a beach. You're walking along a beach. It's a long beach. You start at one end and you start walking. You don't realise how far you've walked till you turn around and look back. And all of a sudden you realise you've just walked all that way. It's a bit like that. It's a bit like that. So you let me know in the comments if it resonates, if you want to share. And after depth comes bloom, the blooming. Our heart softens and life begins to open again. That was Stillbite. There's Stillbite here somewhere. Here she is. This beautiful garden that grows in the hollow spaces, right? It was just beautiful. It's a beautiful little crystal. And this is the soft uplifting moment after all the hard work and the realizing how much was happening that you couldn't see. The rock is opened and you see the beautiful garden that has grown inside that hollow space. And then now we can draw it back to what many of us have experienced in grief. When we lose someone who was important to us, who our lives revolved around in one way or another. It could be a partner, it could be a parent you looked after. But if you've cared for someone that you love while they're going through their end of life, then you've had this because they become the centre of your world, because that's just what happens when we're looking after someone who is terminal. And when they go, when they pass, there's this huge hole. A hole inside you is the size that they took up in your life. You know, some people die and they only leave a little hole. Some people die and they leave a hole bigger than you. And Stillbite came to say that that hole feels like it's big and it feels like it's empty. But the beautiful thing about that empty space is that slowly again, over time, a garden grows inside it. Because still white grows inside those hollow spaces, inside rocks. And when you break it open, that's when you find this beautiful crystal. And when it opens, when your heart opens, still white can talk about the heart. It's a beautiful soft salmon colour, you know. The heart opens again after you've done that deep work. After you've done that deep work with this big hollow space inside. The heart starts to open again. And that blooming surprises us. And sometimes we feel guilty about it. Oh, I shouldn't be feeling joy right now. How can I feel this moment of happiness because so-and-so's not here to share it? And we carry that guilt. But the truth is, feeling guilty about feeling joy is not what they would want for us. They want to see you happy. They love us. Yes. Not letting the pain take your joy. Yes, Leah. And that's the thing. What Leah's just said is really quite key. And I think we get to it later. Not sure, do we get to it later? Yes, we do. We get to that choice soon. So the blooming will surprise us. Because we've been carrying this stone in our chest. And when our heart opens, when it cracks, and we realise the beautiful things that have been growing inside, that's the message of still white. And our question is, what does blooming look like for you right now? Again, you can share in the comments if you want, or you just write it down and journal on it later, or even now while we're talking. What does blooming look like for you right now? It's not an easy question to answer, is it? For me, it's the joy that I get from my animals. It's the joy when my young mare walks toward me, ears cocked towards me, open, alert, and whinnies quietly at me. Because when she arrived here almost 2 years ago, I couldn't even stuff the hay into a hay net without her trying to take a piece out of me. She was so scared. And that warms my heart in a way very few things do. So that's what blooming looks like for me right now. It could be holding your newborn grandchild, or seeing your grandchildren playing, because that has that same energy, hasn't it? Has that same energy. Although the playful energy was really the panda energy, but you know. Okay, next. Our next one was Illumination from Sophia. I'm running out of crystals, so I'm starting to do runes, little cards that I've made out of the back of my chocolate packet. Have crystals on them, and some of them just say runes. And the ones that say runes, I pick up my rune pack, shuffle until my guides pull one out, and it was Sophia, which was just perfect timing, because Sophia, and I'll just grab it out, is the inner sun. Right, Sophia spoke to, let me see, can I find you, Sophia? Sophia. Swallows are in the sun. It's the moment that clarity returns. You know, I spoke about this in the evening one, I think, more than the morning. But we have here this rather cut young man, and he is wielding light. Right, his hand is up above, and we can just imagine that there's light in his hand, and he's shining it on this monster type thing. And to me, I'm not sure if it's a dragon or a crocodile. But see how he's not destroying it? Look at his hand. He just has his hand on it, like you would on your dog's head, just to say, no, just stay there. You don't have to jump up on me right now. You're safe. So he's shining the light on this thing. So the moment when clarity returns and we begin to shine as our true selves again. That was the message. Now, Ronnie, you've said something. Yes. When you notice that you are no longer being yourself. You're being manipulated, not conditioned to be like everyone else rather than yourself. Yeah. So, our inner sun, what it feels like when shadows are illuminated. When the light shines on our shadows, again, that is really uncomfortable. The ego does not like light being shown on the shadows, because we put a lot of effort into hiding them, to tucking things away into the shadows so we don't have to face them. And the light shines on them, and the ego gets very upset about it. Denial is a big thing. But also feeling really uncomfortable, because it's not easy. And you know, hello, Kaledo. Thank you. It's like the light shines, and it's like when you realize that you've played a part in the patterns. It's not comfortable. And the shadows are the things that lurk. And the traumas, and it's inner child work, because the inner child put up walls to protect itself. And all these things fall under shining light into the shadows. But when we actually face those shadows, acknowledge them, because it doesn't even necessarily mean you need to work with your shadows. Acknowledging them does the work. And that's a point when our true selves start to show again. The soul is actually is able now to start taking the reins a little bit more, because we have allowed our shadows to have light shone on them. But the thing is, when those shadows are illuminated, we actually feel like we're dying. It feels like we're dying. Because the ego hates it. The inner child has put so much work. I'm not saying they're the same, okay? But the inner child has put so much energy and so much work into creating these safety measures, these boundaries, these walls around itself, that when we shine the light on, it no longer feels safe. Where am I going with that? What do my notes say here? Yeah. I mean, you don't feel safe because you're changing things. We go through a period of not feeling safe because of the change that's happening. And we feel like we're dying. The ego doesn't like feeling like it's dying, Because the ego is a part of us that we need so that we don't just lie down in bed, never get out of bed and just die. Right? The ego is all about life. It's important. We don't want to get rid of our egos. We want to learn how to work with it. But when we shine light on those shadows, we feel like a part of us is being attacked, a part of us is dying. The truth is that if we can sit with those shadows, love those shadows, our authentic self is able to shine. Our authentic self is allowed to return. Our soul is able to step forward. You're welcome, Linda. Thank you, sweetheart. And when our authenticity returns, the shadows no longer scare us. We now become a shadow walker because they don't scare us. It's like, oh, you again, big scary monster. You know, you don't scare me because I know you're really just a terrified little child inside. So I'm just going to send you some love because I know that's what you really need. We start to live as our true self. And when we're living as our true self is when our soul is leading. Our soul's the one sitting there in the driver's seat, driving the horses, rather than our ego. And our question for this part of our message, Sawelo, is when did you last feel truly aligned with who you are? Yes, that's right. You feed your inner child. You love it. Exactly. You treat it the way you wished you had been treated as a child. Your mother, your inner child. This is not a mother bashing either. Most of our mothers did the best they could with what they had. Right? I was not a perfect mother. I did my best. But I wasn't perfect. There are things I could have done better. But I don't beat myself up about it because I know I did my best at the time. And if I did it now, I'd do better because I know better. And when we can forgive ourselves like that, we are able to forgive those who have hurt us. We forgive ourselves for not noticing the patterns earlier. This forgiveness of self is one of the biggest things. Because forgiving others is nowhere near as important as forgiving ourselves for the part that we played in whatever it was. I'm going off track again. When did you last feel truly aligned with who you are? You can tell me in the comments or just write it down as a journal prompt to think about later. And our last message was Maphanite. And finally, we arrive at choice. So Maphanite filters water, and I put it away last night. It's a little cab, so it filters water. That's in the same way wisdom learns to filter life. The deeper, what you'll find with my messages, I'm going off them again. What you'll find with my messages, and I'm getting it tighter. The mornings are really intentions, because the morning messages were getting like 20 minutes long, and that's far too long for a quick morning message, right? So it's a 20-minute, trying to get them down to around the 4 minutes. So it's just a quick morning intention. And then the evening one goes much deeper with the spiritual story behind it. So, and followed at the end by, at the moment I'm doing a sleep wind down, but I'm not sure whether that's actually what people want. I'd love some feedback. I need to do a post in the community and ask. So in the same way that Maphanite filters water, wisdom learns to filter our life, things that are happening. Not everything needs to stay inside us. Now this comes perfectly after Suelo, because Suelo shines a light on the shadows. And then Maphanite comes and says, okay, so now you get to decide. The shadows were all stories. They're all stories that we tell ourselves. We choose which stories we keep and which stories we let go, which ones we release. And in truth, that is the choice. The only choice we really have is how we respond to things, the story that we tell ourselves. And the Maphanite evening one, which I think has just gone live, is we speak about that choice. Sorry, I've just lost it. You've been dealing with. I lost it. Sorry, Linda, I lost it. It'll show up later. So we don't need to keep everything. Not everything needs to stay inside of it. Some of those stories, most of those stories, we can let go. We can allow them to filter through Maphanite's wisdom. Some of those stories we may choose to keep. Some of them we may choose to rewrite a little bit. Right? That's our choice. Because not everything needs to stay inside. We choose what we carry forward from this point. And this is about discernment. It's about deciding what no longer serves. And if you're in a place where you've decided that you're going to let your soul to lead, you want to live a soul-led life, then anything that doesn't serve the soul can just be let go. Shine your light on the shadows, see all the ones that are serving ego rather than soul, and let them go. The ones that serve your soul, keep. Filter through your life experiences and decide which ones are important to hold on to and which ones aren't. Do you really want to hold on to that time that that person was cruel? Or do you just want to let it go? It's just a part of the flowing river. You might want to hold on to that time that your baby first looked you in the eyes and smiled. But you don't need to hold on to the day the dog bit you, right? You have a choice. And this is where wisdom steps in and we decide what serves the soul and what doesn't. Who do I want to be and which story serves that and which stories don't? We choose what we carry forward. So, our question: what are you choosing differently in your life now? You can put something in the comments or you can just write it down and think about it later. Thank you for being here. Kaleido Minds, I know your name's not really Kaleido, but I don't know what else to call you. Thank you for being here. What are you choosing differently in your life now? For me, it's choosing to trust. And everything that means. The allowing. The believing that my soul knows so much better than I do. But that's just me. So when we look back at this whole week together, we see a path. And it's huge. When I look back and I thought, this is the whole journey. And the messages I'm working on today actually come from the Moja stones. Let's just call them Opie stones. And it closes this whole thing up. But I don't want to do too much of a spoiler. But when we look back at this last week and all of these messages, we see a path. Stillness, awareness, trust, healing, depth, blooming, illumination, and choice. It's amazing lineage, really. It's amazing lineup of messages. I couldn't have planned that. My spirit team bring the message that they want me to give each day. And I just trust and go with the flow. And we end up something as magical as this. And it's not just a series of stories. You come back and you watch these each day. And it's not just a series of stories. It's actually a coherent map of how our soul grows. And I've been really mind blown when I've realized just how much it spoke to that in this last 7-8 days. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere in this journey this week, you've recognized a part of your own life, where you are, where you've been, where you're going. Somewhere along that path, each one of us is walking our own journey. We may be in similar places. Some may be in a different part of the path. But every one of us is on our own journey. A lot of us have similar experiences, but none of us have lived exactly the same experiences. None of us have seen them the same way. It's like I said the other day, two people can see the same thing and have a different story. It's all a part of the plan, that we each have our own journey. Sometimes we walk alongside each other for a little while. Sometimes for a long while. The trouble, they've just shown me this picture. The trouble with so many highly sensitive empaths, is that sometimes, so that we don't have to walk alone, we drag someone behind us. So, as we close, this has gone a lot longer than I planned. You might even ask yourself tonight, where am I on this journey right now? Where am I now? Where do I want to go? Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your comments. It's so beautiful to have you here with me. So many times I do these lives and I'm just talking at a camera and there's no one here. This one started like that and I realised I hadn't set it as public, so I stopped it. I have to delete that when YouTube lets me. But it's been beautiful to have you here. Lovely to see your comments. Lovely to feel this feeling of community. Because to be honest with you, I crave that community. So I set up the Facebook group. But the trouble is a lot of spiritual seekers have left Facebook because of everything that's happened the last few years and how people have been the freedom of speech has been taken away. So I have opened up a thing on Discord. It's clunky. It's difficult. It's kind of like the old message boards. But I'd love to see you in there. Discord. You'll see an invite in all of my descriptions. For the last few days, I've been putting the Discord group in. I've just started putting material in there. I stick a journal prompt in there, which is just going a bit deeper than our daily intentions. Just to deepen it a bit more than on YouTube. And it gives us a place where we can talk about stuff that we can't talk about on YouTube. So yeah, thank you for joining me. It's beautiful to spend this time with you. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Kaleido, although I think you've left. I think I've got all of you that have spoken. Ronnie. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being the first person here today with me. The evening message is up. At the end of all of my evening messages, there's a wind down to help you go to sleep. If you have trouble going to sleep, give it a try. I know Ronnie's been watching them. And I use them when I need a nap. I'll put it on and I'll go to sleep. I wake up 45 minutes later and go, wow, that worked. So try it if you have trouble going to sleep. And thank you. Again. Shalama, which just means bless you. Blessed be your day. I'll catch you again soon. Good night. Now we end this.